Shavuot, or Pentecost, is the celebration of the manifestation of the divine presence and his revelation to his people. This festival and its related readings will be taught in this 2-day miniseries. Pentecost was the Greek name for Shavuot, and what it is called in the Greek manuscripts of the memoirs and the letters of the New Testament. However, the entire miniseries is very much from the Orthodox Jewish perspective, but please perceive the mirrored revelation within this miniseries and the events of Acts 2. Note, the apocryphal book of Sirach was quoted by Yeshua HaMashiach, or Jesus Christ, in his Sermon on the Mount. This book, which was prevalent in the first century and attested to by the ancient Christian canons, was unfortunately removed from the KJV, as well as all the other apocryphal books, after the Anglican Reformation and its consequences. Habakkuk wrote that Adonai is in his holy temple, let all the earth be silent before him. Habakkuk 2:20. The Hebrew form of Habakkuk 3:1 is rendered typically in English as a prayer of Habakkuk the prophet on Shlogonoth. However, there are issues with this translation. Tefillah, which is commonly translated as prayer, does not mean this at all. It means a laborious love awakening a desire to unite with the King of the universe. The Christian concept of prayer is better translated as bakasha or sivak within Judaism. Shlogonoth is translated typically as an erratic rhythm by which this tefillah was to be chanted. However, the root word of Shlogonoth is the Hebrew term shagah. This term means to go straight or to err. If Shlogonoth was an erratic rhythm, it would be an accurate description, as an erratic rhythm has gone astray from the normal melodious rhythms of most tefillot. The context of this tefillah, though, alludes to a human error or a human has gone astray. When all this is considered, the proper translation of Habakkuk 3:1 is thus: a tefillah of Habakkuk the prophet concerning mistakes of men. From this point forward, I will be rewording Habakkuk 3:2 through 19 in the Hebrew context of the language used, accompanied by commentary. My master, I have listened to the report about you. My master, I was alarmed by your deeds. Bring your deeds to the inward part of years. Continue to make it known in the inward part of years, but in your wrath remember your compassion. The master came from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. Note, Teman is a northern district of Edom. This is another indication that Jabal is Mount Sinai. His splendor covered the sky, and his praise filled the earth. His brightness was like that of the sun, flashing rays from the power concealed in his hands. Note, the Hebrew word used here for rays is kirin. This, unfortunately, is also the term for horn. This is the common translation of most English translations by way of the Vulgate. Before him went pestilence, and plague followed close behind. Note, according to Adam Clarke, the pestilence mentioned is a reference to the plague of Numbers 11:33, 14:37, and 16:46. Furthermore, he stated that the plague which followed the king of the universe was a reference to the fire which often erupted as a form of punishment, per Leviticus 10:2, Numbers 11:1, and 16:35. He stood, and the earth was startled. He looked, and the nations trembled. The eternal mountains bowed down. The ancient hills are his. Note, most English translations will add the phrase, and measured. A practice started with Jerome in his Vulgate. I saw trouble in the tents of Cushan, and the tent hangings shaking in the land of Midian. Note, Cushan is either a reference to Arabian Cush or to Cushan Rishathama. My master, have the rivers enraged you to where your anger burned against them? Was your anger against the sea? Is that why you rode your horses, your chariots of salvation? Note, per Clark's commentary, this is a poetic allusion of the way the King of the universe led Israel through the Gulf of Aqaba. You exposed your bow and swore over your tribes. You cleaved the earth with rivers. Note, Clark stated that this implies that the King of the universe is drawing his bow from his quiver to prepare for battle. He also stated that the phrase concerning rivers is a reference to Numbers 21, verses 13 through 15. The mountains saw you and trembled. A flood of water passed by. The deep thunders forth. It raised high waves. Note, the king is described, per Clark's commentary, as being able to accomplish the most arduous tasks easily. Through poetic allusion, the king is shown how the Gulf of Aqaba split and stood on heaps above the deep. Or rather, how the king split the Gulf of Aqaba and made its waters stand on heaps above the depths. The sun and moon dimmed in the sky at the light of your arrows proceeding at the radiance of your glittering spear. Note, this is a reference to Joshua 10:11 through 12. In fury, you stride through the land. In anger, you trample the nations. Note, this seems to reference the conquest of Canaan, trampling the pagan nations of the land. You went out for the salvation of your people, for salvation with your anointed one. You crushed through the head of the house of the wicked, uncovering its foundation to the back of the neck. Note, this was a marvel at his deliverance of his people through the anointed vessel of Moses, and by the judgment he poured out upon Egypt on Nisan 15th, 1446 BC. You pierced the head of their warriors with their own rods. You were rejoicing at the prospect of devouring the poor in secret. Note, per Clark's commentary, this is a reference for the death of a majority of Pharaoh's armies when they drowned in the Gulf of Aqaba while pursuing the Israelites. You tread through the sea with your horses through the mighty waters. Note, this is a reference to Exodus 14:19 and 20. When I heard, my body trembled. My lips quivered at the sound. Weakness came into my limbs. My legs gave way beneath me. I wait quietly the day of trouble, when he arises to attack the people who are our assailants. Note, after reflecting on the wondrous and miraculous revelations which manifested for their forefathers, the prophet returns to his grief at the present state of his countrymen. Though he knew Judah would face exile soon, as the time for such was drawing nigh, Habakkuk looked forward to the Neo-Babylonian Empire being punished as well. For even if the fig tree does not blossom, and no fruit is on the vines, even if the olive tree fails to produce, and the fields yield no food at all, even if the sheep vanish from the sheep pen, and there are no cows in the stalls, still I will rejoice in Adonai. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. Note, the prophet will rejoice even when everything around him is falling apart. The kingdom is falling to exile. The people become deprived and persecuted. Thus captures the attitude with which the king's people, both Israel and the church, should have when suffering. Elohim Adonai is my strength. He sets my feet as a deer and enables me to walk over my high places. For the lead musician with my stringed instruments. Note, this is similar to Psalm 18 verses 32 through 33. The statement about walking on the high places is seemingly a reference to the future restoration of the people to the land, though it will only be a province of the Persian Empire.